Okay, Fidel here again. We're gonna continue making pizza and talking about your frequently asked questions. In the meantime, I'm gonna tell you what I got here. First, we've got some fresh mushrooms, fresh white mushrooms, some thin sliced onions and thin sliced red bell pepper. And I'm going to be making this next pizza with a bit of this. This is a homemade Italian sausage. If you're interested in homemade Italian sausage, the recipe is on my channel. Look on my channel. Be sure to subscribe, and you'll be able to get everything that I upload that's new. I've got my mozzarella cheese. I'm gonna, not this pizza, but I also have some salami Napoli, which I divide out into packs that I'm going to use at each time, and keep the rest of it put away and frozen. Got Parmigiano Reggiano. Usually I freshly grate it, but this is leftover from the last time I made pizza. And this here is a sliced, a little bit spicy pepperoni. And just over here to your left is the pizza that just came out. If you haven't seen that video, maybe you better go back to my channel and see that pizza being made. But I'm going to make an Italian sausage pizza. These pizzas take a little bit longer because I got to pinch off the sausage by hand. And so let's go ahead and get started with the pizza. Okay. Right now the fire is beginning to die down just a bit, but I'm not going to put a piece of firewood in there until I get things started here. So another frequently asked question is, hey, all my dough balls have started to stick together. Well, that isn't happening here because I've only put 8 pieces in and they didn't really stick together. But you can see this one is stuck to this one, and this one's getting close. And we're really not having that kind of problem. But it's always best to take the second one in, and the one and closest to the wall of your container. And once you get that, then you're going to have this open space to work with to get any of the other ones out. So don't try to go for the one in the corner. That's going to be the hardest one to get out anyway, because you still have to deal with this, and it's hard to, your arms, your fist, your wrist is going to be hitting here trying to scoop it in. Even if you try to do it this way, you may be able to pull it off, but it's better to just make space, and you know, you'll be able to get in here and slide right under it. Okay, well, right now we got this one, so I'm going to make sure it's loosened from all sides. Okay, get enough flour underneath that. Quickly into the flour. Okay. Okay, and the technique I use for pushing out the dough into a disc has relatively not changed unless I'm using a stronger flour. This is pretty soft. You'll find Caputo flours, if you ferment them properly, can be very soft, and you don't really need to beat them up to slap them out. You know, so basically I just want to make sure that the rim is there and bubbles are popped. So move that here for a minute. Flour here. Not too much though. So another question is, why don't you use more flour to keep it from sticking? Well, flour, once it burns, tends to turn bitter. Or once it cooks, it gets stuck on the bottom of your crust, it tends to taste bitter. So we want to avoid that bitter flavor as much as possible. So, okay, so we've got that going there, and I'm going to put on my welder's glove and put in a few pieces of firewood. Let that fire start to ramp up while I attend to this. Yeah, sometimes you see a couple of big bubbles here and there. Yeah, you can just go ahead and pop them. It's no big deal. Okay, and some sauce. Now in Naples, I found that they use quite a bit of sauce, or tomato sauce, to the point where your pizza is downright juicy, and it is so flavorful. But it is a pizza that you have to eat with a fork and knife, and that's just something that people here in Japan and largely in the United States are not used to. So I tend to go a little bit easier on the sauce, but at the same time, I'm trying to balance it in between having a lot and but leaving it so we can still eat it by hand. So this is going to be some Italian sausage. It was homemade a few days ago. Again, the recipe is on my channel, so feel free to look for that and try out my recipe. Also, the recipe for my pizza sauce is also there. This pizza sauce is my take on something that is originally a New York style pizza sauce. Okay, another frequently asked question is about yeast. What kind of yeast should I use? Hey, don't you use a sourdough starter? And what about fresh yeast? Well, yeah, there are 3 yeasts that I have used that is a sourdough starter. I've used fresh yeast, which is also known as what is it? Levita de birra, which is beer yeast. Now, it's not necessarily used for beer, but I guess that's what they've been calling it in Italy for quite some time. But it basically is just the fancy way of saying fresh yeast. And so what's the difference? Well, there's a lot of difference. I found that the easiest to use by far is instant dry yeast, because you get consistent results, unless you've had some yeast that's been in your cabinet or refrigerator for a long time. Now, if you have fresh yeast and you've just opened a large package, it's best to put it in a dark spot in your fridge and try to use it within a year. Otherwise, you'll start to notice inconsistent results. You can keep it up to, maybe 2 or 3 years, but like I said, you're going to have to be proofing it, and you might have to adjust your recipes. So the next yeast, which I found really interesting and something that does impart a good flavor, is fresh yeast, and that is relatively easy to use. But the problem with that is it goes bad within, I'd say, about 3 weeks. It might be good for a little bit longer, but usually when I get it, the expiration date is coming soon, so it's not something I would suggest unless you have a restaurant business and you can go through loads of it, because it comes in a big block. It's like 2 or 3 times the size of a block of butter. And then, can you hold this, Mia? Thank you. And then there's sourdough starter. And that is something I'm going to defer expertise on to a few of the guys who've been using it for a long time on the pizzamaking.com forums. Now, I have dabbled into it and I have notes on it, but I have found I'm getting inconsistent results, but that may be due to like the yeast count in that may be growing or dying as I'm taking care of it. So it is something that needs to be taken care of, because yeast is a living thing, and if you're going to be taking care of a sourdough, you're basically going to be taking care of another pet. And there are times when you should there's a timing to when you should feed it, and those kind of things I find what we call in Japanese mendokusai. So mendokusai means I'm a little bit too lazy to keep up with that, because I'm not able to make pizza on a daily basis. I try to make pizza once a month. That doesn't really work out all the time because I have other commitments. I do a lot of festivals in Japan, and I sell a lot of pizza. And when I do those, I will bulk order a lot of things, and it does give me a chance to try new things on a large scale. But for the most part, unless it's something that you really want to get into, like as a hobby, dealing with a sourdough starter, you probably don't need to do it, and it's not going to give you, anything hugely noticeable difference in taste. I mean, compared to maybe a fresh yeast. And if you ferment your dough properly and really well with even with an instant dry yeast, you're gonna have really good results with that too. So I find my guests have never noticed the difference. And I've never tried them side by side, but when I've had parties, I tell my guests, well, today I'm using this yeast or that yeast, and to tell you the truth, they've never noticed. They've never noticed. Well, it always tastes great, Fidel. So, well, thank you very much. I appreciate it tastes well, but I just went through extra trouble to do this or that with the yeast, and it seemed like it wasn't really noticeable for them. I have noticed the flavor differences. Sourdough, for obvious reasons, it has that name, sourdough. So there's a bit of sourness, and that is a wonderful flavor. Let's see, how did this guy go? This guy looks pretty good too. And this is another pie for my friends. So that is 2 pies down.